Welcome, lambs. Welcome to your True Crime Tuesday episode. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about some mental health hospitals and some atrocities that happened within its walls. Before we begin, I want to introduce the new listeners. My name is Kai, and this is Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide. Also, this episode and all my episodes are sponsored by my lambs in Patreon. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. If you want extras, if you want bonus episodes, if you want to support Love and Murder, head on over to Patreon and just go ahead and subscribe. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. Now, let's get into this True Crime Tuesday. The first one comes from Somerset, England, where 28-year-old Lily Lucas was found unresponsive at the Cygnet Hospital. She had been at this hospital because in 2022, she had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And on September 5th, this privately run hospital had prescribed her with the antipsychotic drug clozapine. And this was to help her manage her symptoms of her schizophrenia. In August of 2022, her schizophrenia had taken a turn, and so her mental health had deteriorated. So they figured that giving her clozapine was the best course of action. Then on September 8th, Lily started drinking water, which normally is what you would do. But she just kept drinking water. And then after a while, she fell on the floor and had a seizure and a heart attack, and then died. The staff had attempted to resuscitate her for 45 minutes before she was transported to the Bristol Royal Infirmary for treatment. But after that, she died. So going through the investigation of her death, they spoke with manager Sereni Dumitru. And she said, well, yeah, I saw Lily every 15 minutes and I just kept looking at her through her window. I didn't go in the room. I just kept looking at her through her window. The reason for this was because as part of giving her first dose of this medication, she was supposed to be watched. So she observed Lily every 15 minutes to, quote, make sure signs of life is observed. So basically, she was just making sure she was twitching, moving, whatever, not really going in there and interacting with her. So you just left somebody with mental health issues to her own devices, and you're supposed to watch this person when they're first given a new drug and you're just peeking in their window? How much time did you give yourself to even look through the window to make sure that there were, quote, signs of life? Were you just glancing like, okay, I did it 15 minutes. Okay, I did it 2:30. Okay, I did it 2:45. Is that what you did? Or did you actually look? Okay, Lily is walking around. Signs of movement. She doesn't look erratic. All right, 2:30. All right, once again, Lily's looking. She's looking out the window. She's walking around. She sat in her bed. Okay, 2:45. Which one was the one you did? When the coroner, Dr. Peter Harrowing, asked the manager if she agrees that, quote, she should have looked in on her and not just through the window, the manager said, quote, yes. Sereni then said, look, the reason why I just glanced in the window and didn't go in to interact with her was because that day we were severely, quote, understaffed. And there was only one registered nurse on shift when there should have been two. And then when she was asked what are the hospital's guidelines to excessive water drinking, she said that if, quote, someone is drinking excessive amounts of water, then staff must seek medical advice as a matter of urgency. And literally none of this was done. She just left a mentally ill person to fend for themselves, not even recognizing that this person was drinking themselves to death. And I don't mean with alcohol. Water. Do you know how much water you had to drink to kill yourself? Let's find out. So according to Medical Daily, when someone has normal and healthy kidneys, they should be able to excrete about 800 milliliters to 1 liter of fluid each hour. That's equal to about 3.3 to 4.2 cups, or 0.21 to 0.26 gallons per hour. Drinking more than this amount will cause an imbalance of electrolytes. It will also show early symptoms associated with hyponatremia, such as headaches, confusion, disorientation, nausea, and vomiting. People who exercise hard are in particular danger from hyponatremia because they have a tendency to drink too much water to compensate for their water loss in sweat, when in fact their body will also accumulate even more water because their bodies are experiencing a stress response. Now, hyponatremia came from Latin and Greek, which translates to, quote, insufficient salt in the blood. This means that having a blood sodium concentration below 135 millimoles per meter, or approximately 0.4 ounces per gallon, is detrimental to your health, where the normal concentration is between 135 to 145 millimoles per meter. When a person drinks too much water in a short period of time, the kidneys are not able to flush out the water fast enough. And so some of that water goes into your blood and your blood becomes waterlogged. Then this extra water goes into your cells. So it leaves the blood, goes into your cells. Then your cells swell up like balloons because they can't even take that much water. And then some of them burst. And then for your brain, apparently the cells in your brain have no room to expand. Quote, this is what Wolfgang, I don't know how to say his last name, Liedtich, a clinical neuroscientist at Duke University Medical Center said, quote, inside the skull, there's almost zero room to expand and swell. That's why if you drink way too much water, brain edema happens. Quote, rapid and severe hyponatremia causes entry of water into brain cells, leading to brain swelling, which manifests as seizures, coma, respiratory arrest, brainstem herniation, and death. So a kidney specialist from Dartmouth Medical School, Heinz Valtin, decided to see if the common advice to drink 8 8-ounce glasses of water per day could hold up to a scientific experiment. And after much experimentation, he concluded that there's no scientific studies that support the 8x8 recommendation. And this recommendation was for healthy adults living in temperate climates and doing mild exercise. So basically, you're not exercising a lot. You don't live in a desert, sweating a lot. Just for healthy adults who live in a temperate climate and do mild exercises like walking. Heinz goes on to say that drinking this much or more, quote, could be harmful, both in precipitating potentially dangerous hyponatremia and exposure to pollutants, and also in making people feel guilty for not drinking enough water. So basically, this is what he's saying, drinking 8-ounce glasses of water per day, depending on where you live, your activity level, and everything like that, could actually be dangerous to you. So I think you should reflect, and I do drink a lot of water, so maybe I should reflect on that myself. So I think you should reflect on how much water you drink if you do drink water, because I know there's people who don't like water. I love water. And see if you are drinking way too much for yourself. My mom told me how to get the amount of water you should be drinking in like liters. I can't remember how she said it, like take your weight divided by 2, something. I can't remember how she said it, but I'm going to search online. I'm pretty sure I could find like something like a water intake calculator because, it's online, and you can find out how much water based on your weight and based on how much time you spent exercising each day, how much water you should be drinking. And again, I'm not saying this is accurate. I'm just saying this is what's on the internet, so you could do this for fun. So what did you think about that one? This Lily who had schizophrenia basically drowning herself, and the hospital manager just blaming low staff as to why she couldn't watch her patient as she was supposed to. And then my thing is, if you have low staff, then I don't know, maybe you shouldn't be taking in as many patients, but then again, you can't leave them on the street. Maybe you should have waited till you had adequate staff in the hospital before changing medications. I'm not sure. I don't work in a hospital, so I don't know how it works. I know when I was younger, my mom used to complain sometimes that they were understaffed and she would have to work. She used to work like 12-hour shifts, and she would have to work over that 12 hours sometime, and she'd come home dead tired. So I don't know how shifting in hospitals work. I'm just speaking out the side of my ass, trying to figure out some way that it could have been prevented. But again, I have no idea. If any of y'all have an idea, you work in a hospital, and you have an idea what they could have done better, then definitely let me know in the comments below because I'd like to read it off in the next episode. And then the next case I had for you was in the Mississippi Today website, and it said Mississippi jailed more than 800 people waiting for psychiatric treatment in a year. Just one of these jails in Mississippi meets state standards. So it starts off by saying apparently 14 years ago, Mississippi legislators had passed a law that required county jails to be certified by the state if they were to be holding people who were awaiting court-ordered psychiatric treatment. It's been 14 years that you're supposed to have gotten this certification from the state, and in 14 years, only one jail in the entire state of Mississippi is certified. Even so, that's not stopping them, because between July 2022 and July 2023, more than 800 people were in jail awaiting treatment. And they were not just in that one jail, they were all throughout the state. Basically, almost all of them were in uncertified facilities. Now, these two publications, ProPublica and Mississippi Today, has made it a habit of reporting on county officials who practice jailing people who have mental illnesses. Most of them haven't even been charged with a crime, and they just sit in jail waiting for treatment. So these publications started to ask about the law that was supposed to be in effect since 2009, and the state's attorney general's office said that, yes, quote, this is a mandatory requirement. The Department of Mental Health responded by sending letters to county officials across the state, encouraging them to stop holding people in uncertified jails. Also, the Department of Mental Health only oversees the state's behavioral health system and has no other responsibilities for the jail. So they have nothing else to do with the jail except for that. So even though this law went into effect, even though the Department of Mental Health is trying to get jails to comply, there is actually no funding to help the counties comply with this law. And even if they don't comply with this law, there are no penalties in place if they don't. So they're just like, what's going to happen? What you going to do? What you going to do? You ain't going to do shh. That's literally what they're saying. So part of the letter that the Department of Mental Health sent out was, quote, according to data collected in FY23, counties are placing people in jail pending admission to a state hospital instead of in a designated holding facility. We strongly encourage you to work closely with your local mental health authority. Contact DMH's Division of Certification to begin the certification process. Like, that's literally all they could send out. But again, the jail gets this. They're like, Ann, what you gonna do? You're not gonna do anything. Nothing's gonna happen to me if I don't do this, so I have other stuff to worry about. Now, it's interesting to note that under state law, counties are responsible for housing people going through the commitment process until they're admitted to a state hospital. And they are allowed to put them in jail before their court hearings if there's no, quote, reasonable alternative. So loopholes, just loopholes. So in trying to get this implemented, they're going out to the prisons, they're handing out notices and everything like that. Some prisons simply just didn't respond, and others said, yeah, I'm interested, but then they did nothing after that. By 2013, only 2 jails out of 82 counties, only 2 jails had been certified. And currently only one of them is, because the other one just fell off the certification. And I know you're asking, what does a jail have to do to certify to be able to hold mental health patients before they're transferred to a clinic? So they must offer on-call crisis care by a physician or a psychiatric nurse practitioner and must supply medications. Their staff must be trained in crisis intervention and suicide prevention. People detained during the commitment process must be housed separately from people charged with crimes in rooms free of fixtures or structures that could be used for self-harm. If they're going to be in a jail, they have to receive some kind of treatment in a semi-safe environment. And in speaking to some of the county officials, they said until recently, they weren't even aware of some of these requirements. So even though they weren't aware of some of these requirements, they were still routinely jailing people only because they thought they might need mental health treatment. So did you just think what they were going to just sit in jail and get better? I don't understand the game plan here. Even though you didn't know what you were supposed to do to get certified, or supposedly didn't even know you were supposed to be certified, why did you have these people just sitting in jail when they didn't even commit a crime? Just because they have mental health issues? And then it's also good to note that Mississippi appears to be the only state in the country where people awaiting treatment are commonly jailed without charges for days or weeks at a time. And they're put into the general population with everybody else. So there could be a sex offender. Now you have a schizophrenic in the jail cell with a sex offender. There could be a murderer. Somebody just went out and murdered somebody. Now you have somebody who has bipolar disorder or something, and they're in a jail cell with somebody who's a murderer. Mississippi jails are subject to no statewide health and safety standards. Many jails treat people going through the civil commitment process basically the same as those who have been charged with crime. They're shackled and given jail uniforms, and then they're held in the same cells as criminal defendants. They receive basically no medical care, and some jails even said they didn't have access, or quote, they couldn't access prescribed psychiatric medications. Now, without those medications, most people's mental health deteriorate even further. So if you have somebody with a hallucinogenic mental issues and they don't have these medications, what do you think is going to happen? Since 1987, at least 18 people who have been going through the commitment process for mental illness and substance abuse have died after being jailed. Most of them have died by suicide because you left them in the room with everything that they can use to self-harm. So when they were going through all of these processes to try and help the jails to upgrade their standards to be able to, one, certify, and two, hold these type of people who are not criminals, who just have mental issues, some people wanted to work with them, and some, it says, quote, sheriffs were frustrated. Some objected to being told that they had to upgrade their jails and train guards so they could care for mentally ill people. They didn't think they should be responsible for them in the first place. Quote, what do they expect of me? What they need to do is turn around and certify some places that are under mental health control so they can be responsible for it, not me. I mean, I can't really argue with him there. It shouldn't be the police's job. It should be the people who are under the mental health control department. So can't really argue with him there. Police can only do so much. Like, I find it funny, for instance, when people call police because there's a coyote running free. What do you want the cops to do? They're not animal control. They're police. People think police are responsible for everything. They're not. So I kind of agree with him. I do agree with him. They shouldn't be responsible for people with mental health issues. Maybe there should be something set up where you call 911. There's a mental health. You know how you can call 911? Well, in the United States, you can call 911. You can get the fire department, the ambulance, or the police. There should be a mental health line as well, where you call that line and maybe the police goes out to help contain the situation while the mental health professional is on site as well. Maybe that's what needs to happen. But in the meantime, they shouldn't be going into jails. If you're not equipped to handle these people and you don't want to handle these people, they should not be in the jail. There needs to be something set into place where there's a fire department, there's a police department, there's a medical department, and there's the mental health department. So I am going to put this article in the show notes below because it goes on way more and talks more about what needs to happen, what did happen, how they're trying to rectify this and everything like that, which I'm not going to go into everything. But you can read it for yourself. It's going to be in the show notes below. What do you think of those shocking numbers? And you know me, I deal with some people with some mental health. I don't have experience with all mental health. And I can't even say that I have experience 100% or even 50% with even the people with mental health that I deal with. I just have a drop in a bucket amount of experience with it. And when I see something like this that's not helping them at all, I get really passionate about that because I see what happens when they don't get any help and people don't understand that they have mental issues. Like once I had a police arguing with me that this person was on drugs and I'm saying this person, I know this person personally, they're not on drugs. Well, they're like, well, I've seen people on drugs and this person is, and I'm telling you this person is not on drugs. Well, look at pupils. Sir, this person is hallucinating. That's why their pupils look like that. Yes, they're not on drugs. And it was like an argument because police do not have experience or training for this. It should be the police is out there to maybe contain the situation. Maybe if they need to restrain this person because they get really strong. When I tell you they get strong, they get really strong. Maybe they're there to help contain the situation while a mental health professional is there to get the patient taken care of and get the patient to the correct place they need to be in. So let me know in the poll. The poll that I'm going to put out is, do you think police should be trained for this? So this should be part of their duties. And the mental health patient goes into the jail in a separate place in order to then be transported to a mental health facility? Or do you think, like I said, there should be a department like you have fire, police, medical, and there should be a mental health department that comes out as well? Which one do you think? I'm going to put that in the poll and I want to hear your answers. Also, if you have any stories of dealing with mental health issues, like you personally or somebody that you know, please list them in the comments below. I would love to read them on a future episode. And in last week's True Crime Tuesday, I gave you 3 cases. It was called a triad of terror. So if you want to go back and listen to that one, if you haven't already, I might actually rename that one for the SEO purposes. SEO is keywords. It helps people find my podcast, but I might go ahead and rename that one. But either way, it was last Tuesday. And my question in that one was, do you think the police officer should have been fired immediately or suspended until a verdict came back? And 100% of y'all said they should have been fired immediately. And one of the comments in relation to I think it was the second story in Tuesday True Crime, Butcher Pete says, it makes you wonder who actually cared about this person that ended up uncovering a monster. And Ruth Johnson said, thank you. You're welcome, Ruth. She usually says thank you under all of my episodes, which don't stop, Ruth. I really appreciate your comment. I think it was the last case of last week's True Crime Tuesday. The guy who stabbed the mother while she was pushing her baby in a stroller, but police hadn't found him yet. So here's an update. So his name again is Habibu Mansoum, and he had stabbed Kulsuma Akhtar and then disappeared. But there were CCTV footage, pictures of him that even I put out. So police were asking if he knew any information, yada, yada. So the update is, and we knew that he probably knew the woman, but that was literally all we knew. So the update was this woman was actually his wife, and he stabbed her in the neck 4 to 5 times in front of their baby and left her there to die. So go back and listen to last week's episode to find out, what happened then. So during the investigation, they found that on March 28th, he shared a clip of a Bollywood film named La Pata Ladies on his Facebook account. And in the clip that he shared, the character says, quote, he was returning home with his wife last night and lost her on the way. And his caption for that quote was 4 crying with laughter emojis. So he did end up being caught finally and actually appeared in court on Friday, April 12th via video link. And then he actually has a provisional trial date for Monday, November 18th. Why all the way then? He was charged with murder, and he was also charged with possession of a bladed article. He also has a plea trial on Friday, May 10th. Why do you have to go through all of these steps? I mean, you literally see him on camera, so he's guilty. So what's the plea trial? So he can say not guilty, and then you're going back all the way November 18th? For what? Everything was caught on camera. He killed his wife in front of his child. Anyway, no motive has been given yet, but they did catch him. So I will update you on that as that moves forward. If you have an update on any one of these cases that I haven't seen and I haven't mentioned, go ahead and let me know in the comments below, and I will read them on next week's True Crime Tuesday. And that is all I have for you for today. I want to hear from you in the comments below. Go ahead and answer the poll question also, and I will see you in the next episode.